You're listening to Conflict Radio on the Conflict Radio Network. Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today we're going to have a bit of a different show. It's a deep show. It's an interesting show. And I hope that everybody sticks around. And I'm going to start this off by saying I wasn't sure how I was going to guide this show along as we went, because I wanted to do a show on Planet X and what the information is about what could be a Planet X in our solar system, like if we're a binary solar system, and that's it's really interesting to get into that and to talk about that. And I started doing research on our guest today, and our guest today is Marshall Masters. I'll read this from Amazon. Marshall Masters is a former CNN Science Features news producer, freelance writer, television analyst, and the publisher of YowUSA.com. And since 1999, he has been researching Earth changes and Nibiru flyby-related topics, including sustainable survival communities, catastrophic crop circles, impact events, and future technologies. Like many others, Marshall sees a dark cloud coming, but what makes him different is that he also sees a silver lining, a noble and inspiring Star Trek future. Now that is awesome. You know, I'm a big Star Trek fan, and if one day and we have a world like Star Trek, wouldn't that be great? No wars here on Earth. I guess there's no money. People just do what's best, just because they want to live a life and I guess take positions and things. I don't really know how any of that works. All I know is that it looks pretty cool on Star Trek to zip around space and spaceships and all that kind of cool stuff, and that'd be really neat. Anyway, just getting back to the guest. I started doing some research last night, and I like doing research on people before I interview them, just so I know what's going on and what we're going to be talking about. And normally how I go about getting guests is that I find a topic that I'd like to learn about myself, and I'll search it on Amazon or I'll search it on the internet and try to find people that have written books about the subject that I'm interested in and interview them. But I try to learn about them and what exactly their specialties are. And I started digging into this, and then I come across he's been following QAnon. And that's a touchy subject to talk about, I guess. I've been trying to steer away from politics on this channel and from this podcast and not talk about it. Well, primarily because a lot of the things, no matter what side you're on, you can't have a discussion without people getting angry or people not listening or whatnot. And maybe that's the wrong way to do things. Maybe we should start doing a little bit more listening to each other and trying to get a different perspective of life than what we're living now. I mean, isn't that the point of living, is to learn? So we're going to dive into Planet X, and then we're going to dive into QAnon and what that is. And, it's really interesting. If you haven't looked into what this is, it's really interesting. And regardless on whether or not you believe it, I mean, it's interesting to look at, right? It's interesting to learn. It's interesting to, I don't know, get an idea of what it is, I mean, the last thing that we need to be doing as American citizens right now is trying to kill the spider in our house that's burning to the ground. Maybe we should forget about that spider and concentrate on our house burning. And I think that's what's happening. I think our house is burning, and we're worried about the spider. We're worried about, the mouse. We're not worried about putting out the fire or stopping the fire. We're not worried about all of the things that we have that we're also going to lose in the fire. We're worried about the stupid spider, and we're fixated on that because that's what we're told to fixate on. And maybe if we just open up our eyes a little and look around, maybe we can see what's really going on. Maybe we'll see the fire. And I hope we can see the fire. I really do. Because our house is important. It's not a bad house. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and go into this. This video is actually going to be uploaded to the old Conflict Radio channel. It's been up for a while. There's a whole bunch of subscribers there that probably don't know that we have a new Conflict Radio Network channel. And if you're listening to this on the old channel, you got notified. There's like 60,000 subscribers there, before we decided to do our relaunch. And when we relaunched, we changed everything. It's now the Conflict Radio Network instead of Conflict Radio, because we are going to be carrying other shows and doing other things. So if you're listening to this on the Conflict Radio channel, might I suggest you pause this and go over to the YouTube search and search Conflict Radio Network, and that'll bring you to the new channel where all of our episodes are being posted. Everything's being posted there, mostly. If we get into certain topics like this that, is going to be, I guess what I could say is, we're going to talk about something that is going to get flagged. It's not going to, how long is this going to be up before it's not? If that's the case, all of our podcasts are available on Spreaker. You can find us on Apple iTunes as well. All the major podcatchers, we're pretty much there. It'll probably be there before it's even on YouTube, because that's just how it works. I usually, while it's uploading and processing on YouTube, I'm usually uploading it, and it's processing a lot quicker on the podcatchers. So you can find us there. So that being said, make sure you subscribe to the new channel. We've had some great guests on. We've got some great guests coming up. And definitely hit that notification button and like and subscribe and all that good stuff. So that being said, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll have Marshall Masters on to discuss Planet X. Welcome back to Conflict Radio. We are with Marshall Masters. Marshall, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to be on.
Man, it's so awesome to have you on. I've been listening to you do various shows for years and years and years, and to finally be able to talk to you, it's pretty awesome. I've been, every day before I have a guest on, I'll research them. I'll go through all of the YouTube stuff. I'll do, pretty much a refresher on who I'm talking to, so I have an idea on the subject matter. And it's pretty obvious that we got to talk a little bit about Planet X. But then I came upon some Q stuff that I guess you've been working on recently, and I kind of heard of that before. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. But first off, going into Planet X, what is going on with that?
Well, Planet X is, do you want me to just quickly explain it for those who are new to the topic?
Yeah, exactly. Like what it is, what's going on, where'd it go?
It didn't go anywhere. It's coming, all right? I'm getting all kinds of emails from people. Well, I don't see all these videos about Planet X anymore. I don't see all these pictures. So it must have disappeared and gone away and been a mirage. And I always write them back and I go, hey, have you heard about COVID, self-isolating? Who's outside taking pictures, okay? there are still reports that are coming in. I'm still seeing good and solid imagery that's coming through. What's changed is that because we're isolating, there's just not that many people out there, capturing images of it. And but the one thing I would want everyone to understand is that there's a very cardinal rule about this. And this was given to me by Dr. Brian Marston of the Smithsonian Astrophysics Labs 20 years ago. And he said, Marshall, the failure to observe an object proves only one thing. You have failed to observe the object. All right? And I observed it with my own eyes. I saw it in 2018. So, hey, kiss my grits. All right? I'm not interested in proving anything to anybody. Well, let me give you the upshot to everyone. We're in a binary star system. And this is something that astronomers have known actually since 1940. Carlos Muñoz Ferrada, an Argentinian, I believe he's from Argentina, very, 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 very good astronomer. And at that time, he predicted the existence of two objects in a long period comet-like orbit of about 3,600 years around our sun. And unlike our planet, it goes clockwise instead of counterclockwise. And so he then predicted that there was what he called a black star and a large stony planet several times the size of Earth. That they were in, these two bodies were in orbit around each other. And in 1940, that's what they called it, was a black sun, because they couldn't see him. These are very, in terms of visible light, they're occluded because they have a huge field of iron oxide all around them, huge dust balls. And for example, we're talking about America now is the king of ventilators. When we pass through the tail of that system, we're going to need every darn one of them. I'll tell you that. We're going to need every darn one of those things. Because the air is just going to be awful, and it's just going to give people with weak lungs and medical conditions a tremendous amount of problem. But this iron oxide, this dust, is caused because a brown dwarf, which is what we actually now call them, and the astronomer, I forget her name, but she was the character Jodie Foster played in Contact is actually based on her life and her work, research. And she's the one who invented the term brown dwarf. And so a brown dwarf is going to be bigger than Jupiter. It could be 2 or 3 times the size of Jupiter. Keep in mind, Jupiter, some people call Jupiter a sun because it emits more radiation than it receives from the sun. But we're in a binary star system, and the path to that started hundreds of years ago with the discovery of Uranus. Uranus was the first planet discovered with a telescope, and it was observed, and there was a perturbation, a little zig. It was coming around and keep getting pulled out and then snapping back in, pull out and snap in. All right. And observers saw this, and so they actually accumulated sufficient amount of observational data that they were able to calculate the location of whatever object was perturbing Uranus. And they sent that formula to John Gall at the Berlin Observatory, and literally, and I mean, this is in the days when people were still using gaslight, and literally took the formula, sat down with his telescope, and dialed it right in, and within minutes, Neptune was discovered. First planet discovered purely with mathematics. And see, that's the story of Planet X. Planet X, after the Europeans found Neptune, they found that Neptune also was being perturbed the same way Uranus is. So then the search went from the Uranus perturber to the Neptune perturber, and they couldn't find it. Enter Planet X research in America. We take the forefront. Lowell Observatory. Percival Lowell, and he was a independent, wealthy gentleman, and he wanted to find Planet X. He wanted to find Neptune's perturber. And so he started the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff to do exactly that. Now, it is believed in approximately about 1905, he actually imaged Pluto, but thought it was something else. And in 1930, Clyde Tombaugh of the same observatory, who was perpetuating the work that Lowell was doing to find the perturber, found what they thought was the perturber, Pluto. And there was an awful lot of excitement, and they figured, aha, problem solved, we found Neptune's perturber. But it was in, I believe, the 70s when Moon Charon was discovered in orbit around Pluto. And then they were able to use that to calculate the size and mass of Pluto, which, interestingly enough, Pluto is kind of puny. It's only about 60% the size of our own moon. Think about it. Our moon is 40% larger than Pluto. Wow.
Yeah, you know, I was reading somewhere that Pluto's covered in water now.
Well, that would be interesting. And Pluto definitely, when we first started researching Planet X, one of the things that we noticed in the reporting when Pluto it's in a long orbit, long elliptical orbit, comes in to the system and then swings around and goes way back out again. It's got a very long orbit. And when it's going out on its what's called aphelion leg to its furthest point of distance away from the sun, what astronomers have always been able to measure is that process of whipping around the sun increases the surface temperature. Except this last time, which was in the late 90s, I believe, this was about the time very close to when we began doing the research, was dramatically higher. They had never seen anything like it. And, you know, it's interesting, but if you're saying that Pluto has water on its surface, maybe it's the water that is melting when it comes in close, freezing as it goes out. That could be that. That's an interesting thing to consider. Yeah, I'd like to follow that. Thanks for that tip. But what we have, though, is a binary star system. We have two suns, one large Sol, but the brown dwarf, which is astronomers named it Nemesis. There was Nemesis theory came out in the 1960s, 70s, in that time frame. I know because when I was in high school, it was the buzz. Everybody was fascinated with the prospect that we lived in a binary star system with two suns. And all of that conversation was very strong. And if you we've documented where you go back into the media coverage, there was phenomenal media coverage about us being in a binary star system and about the existence of Nemesis, or what you call Planet X. And then in 1983, that changed. You see, the Pioneer probes were sent up to do magnetic surveys to determine if it was feasible that there was a large perturber out there. And that's what the Pioneer probes determined. So based on that feasibility, the IRAS satellite was put up. And it's an infrared astronomical study. And they just wanted to create an infrared map of our solar system and everything in it. And they were doing that and this was in conjunction with ESA and in Europe, and particularly with the Dutch, they were very interested, and the Italians. And so IRAS is out there taking pictures, and boom, it images Nemesis. Now, it's not imaging Nemesis in visible light. You can't see this thing until it's really close, because again, it's got this huge dust cloud around it, and that's formed because when a brown dwarf ignites to become a sun, it doesn't have the mass to become like our star, to have a fusion furnace, so to speak. And so brown dwarfs ignite and then slowly bank off over billions of years, and they can sustain life. This much astronomers have determined is that, yes, you can have life living on planets in and around a brown dwarf star, even with all the filth and you can't see anything. So this system is out there. It's moving on two axes. And what you have to understand is you have Nemesis. Nemesis has planets and moons in orbit around it. And so we call it a mini constellation. And we're on a merging orbit with this mini constellation because it's moving on two planes in different ways. Now, on the horizontal plane, it is moving in an orbit around the sun of approximately 360 days. So we have fairly close matching orbits, which is the reason why we keep seeing it on the other side of the sun. But what's also happening is that we're inching towards each other. And then eventually we'll get to a point where it's completely out from behind the sun, and everyone's going to be seeing it, and everyone's going to be talking about it. But right now, I have a picture on my website. I've been looking at, probably nobody does Planet X image analysis more than I do, or better than I do. I think I've been generally recognized that way. And I've looked at thousands of videos and pictures over the years. What I publish is maybe 1% of the leads that I receive. I'm very picky. I look through this and I scan it for telltale signs of aberration, or can look for that. And so I've had this one picture up on my site it was taken at altitude from a passenger jet, and you see chemtrails. Oh my God, the chemtrails are thick, and it's getting worse now than ever before. It's simply awful. And even with all that chemtrailing, 3 objects were verifiably natural objects. They passed my gamma test. They have clouds in front of them. Clouds never get in front of a flare, all right, or any kind of lens operations. Lens aberrations happen in the lens or just actually in front of the lens. But this tests out. Now, the problem with the picture is that it's not that it's a good picture. I mean, for me, it's the best I've ever analyzed. The problem is that Planet X is like ufology. We have mountains of evidence, mountains and mountains and mountains and mountains of pictures, videos, eyewitness reports. And what do people say when they look at all of that, all those mountains of information? Well, I don't know. I'm still not decided. Or who can say? It's always kind of yeah. Because the truth is, most people are not going to believe UFOs exist until one day an alien is eating their face. I'm serious. They're going to have aliens eating their face off before they're going to believe it. So you have the same problem with Planet X. And it really is for people who understand science, understand how to read it and interpret it, as I do, and a lot of the folks that read my articles and follow my work do. But for a lot of people who don't have the discipline of science, it's really it's confusing. It's like, the old adage of how do you eat an elephant one spoonful at a time. The problem is where the heck do you dig in? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the problem for people. So it'll happen. It's coming around. You're going to see it. And that brings me to politics and why I am following politics so heavily with Q and my QX articles is.
Well, hang on a second before we get into that.
Sure.
I have some questions about what you just said. So basically, Planet X is the star, and there's other planets that are orbiting
Well,
this
Planet X
this
is
dwarf.
actually in reference to, yeah, it's a good thing you raised that term, because it's like, what does Planet X mean? Planet X was, remember we talked about Percival Lowell, who formed the Lowell Observatory.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's also the man who officially coined the term Planet X. This was coined by an astronomer. Planet X is not Planet 10 or any of this other disinformation propaganda garbage. Okay? And by the way, anybody out there says Planet X is going to hit our planet, if you believe that, you're as dumb as a sack of hammers. We're going to have other things hitting us, but we're not going to have planets. That's just propaganda from fear mongers, clickbait jerks, and whatnot. Don't believe that. But that's not to say we're not going to have a rough time. We're going to have a rough time. But anyway, the thing about it is that Nemesis, brown dwarf, has these planets around it. And the term Planet X simply means that an object or a planet exists by virtue of the way it interacts with other known and observable planets. And that's what Planet X means. So when they observed the perturbations in Uranus, they knew that there had to be another large planet beyond it, and they used those calculations to literally dial in on Neptune, zip, boom, easy as he could be. That's how good. So the math told them it's out there. The observations told them it's out there. It was the science that told them it's out there, and they understood the science. That's the important thing. The public just doesn't understand the science too well because, frankly, that's the whole point of cover-up. It's to prevent people from understanding this science. All right? And that's really what I feel is the big thing that I have to be up against. Now, when we talk about the term Planet X, and so that's the reason why I like to use the term Planet X system. All right?
Yeah, it's a system. It's not just one body.
You have Nemesis and moons and planets, of which you're going to have Helion, Arbota, and Nibiru. And then there's minor planets and moons. There's about a cluster of about 7 of these objects, as I recall, in the system. And it varies depending on who's seeing and seeing what. But I have always just focused on Nemesis and the 3 major planets, Helion, Arbota, and Nibiru. Nibiru is the outermost major planet. It's several times the size of Earth. And Nibiru translates to the planet of crossing, all right, which is, it's the one that when the Nemesis system is coming through, because it's coming up from the southern skies, it'll arc over our heads in the northern skies and go down again. And so because Planet X is the furthest most out, it's going to be the furthest inside our system as this mini constellation passes through. So this is what we have to look forward to in the future. And that is the story on Planet X. It is a term that says we know something exists by virtue of the science we have used to observe objects. It is perturbing or, some way interacting with these objects. Now, the question is the Planet X system interacting with Earth? Not directly. Indirectly, it is. Two things that we're observing indirectly and been tracking for years with my science articles. There's a steady increase since December 12th, all right, or December 21, 2012, Mayan calendar. People think that was a hoax. Farthest thing from the truth. The Mayans were giving us a harbinger. They said, when you see a celestial alignment from a given place on this day, start preparing. Hell's coming to visit. Clean the guest room. It's going to be a long one. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly, because right after that, from January 2013 on, we've been tracking the numbers for earthquakes of all magnitudes and observed fireballs, and the growth has been exponential. Exponential. As in, remember Coyote, Roadrunner?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Coyote would always get on the Acme rocket, light the fuse, and then he's going straight up, and then the rocket would peter out, and then he'd go straight down and die in a canyon and come back again. All right, always great fun. Well, since January 2013, Coyote's been on that Acme rocket, and it ain't running out of fuel. It keeps going up, and it's only a matter of time before something busts loose. And that's just the way that is. So what's causing the fireballs? What's causing the earthquakes? Let's talk about them separately. Fireballs is you have this system, the Nemesis or the Planet X system, whatever you want to call it, but it's coming through. And imagine like it has a bow wave. You see ships at sea, and the dolphins love to get in front of those bulbs on the front of the ships because of the way it pushes the water, and they get a free ride that they can race through the water so fast and so effortlessly. So for them, it's a real thrill ride. It's an e-ticket at Disneyland. But with Nemesis at the core of the Planet X system, what you have is it has a ball of dust and debris around it that it's like our Oort cloud. It's a residual of the creation of our system. And the same thing holds true for the Planet X system, or constellation if you want. And it is encountering other objects and dislodging them. So it's coming across other objects that are in our system that are in completely benign orbits and would never be a concern under normal circumstances. But if you got this big cue ball plowing through the system, man, it's scattering stuff in every which way but loose. And so this is what we're observing, is that we have this massive increase in reported fireballs. We're not looking for meteorites, shooting stars, as people call them. The fireballs are those big smokers that go across the sky. And if they're big enough to detonate with a flash and a bang, it's a bolide. And if they're destructive, they're a super bolide, which is exactly what happened in Chelyabinsk, Russia in 2013. So we're seeing this steady increase of fireballs, which tells us this cue ball is knocking stuff every which way but loose. Now let's go from that data track to the other one, earthquakes of all magnitudes. And why do we measure earthquakes of all magnitudes? For many years, about a decade, USGS, and this was particularly during the Obama administration, once Trump came in, there's been more accurate USGS reporting, but during the Trump administration, there was a consistent pattern of downplaying the numbers for statistical jiggering. So you'd get an earthquake and said it's a 7.1, and the next day, what would they do? They would come out and say, oh, it was a 6.8. Or it's a 5.1. Oh, it was a 4.9. Okay? People think, oh, that's not such a big thing, but what they do was the whole narrative they were building is there's not have been an increase because they would say, well, we have not seen a huge increase in 6.0 magnitude or greater or 5.0 magnitude or greater. And they would have these arbitrary cutoffs because they were jiggering the numbers down below the cutoff. So when we took and we went to earthquakes of all magnitude, the jiggering is completely obliterated. It's not meaningful anymore. And what we're seeing is there's this continuing pattern of this exponential rise in earthquakes. I mean, we just had a big one in California, okay?
Yeah, Mexico too, I think.
Yeah, and so we're having all kinds of problems. But why is it we're having all of these increased activities, earthquakes? But let's talk about the other things. We're talking about a lot of volcanic activity. I can remember when I first started doing research, there would be 40 active and erupting volcanoes in a year. That's over a span of 12 months. Now we never fall below 40 active volcanoes a month, not a year. Okay? Let's put that in perspective. So that is the result of energy. Where's this energy coming from? That's a simple answer. Why are they chemtrailing? They are chemtrailing with aluminum because they want to reflect light back into space, particularly the radiation that is in the photons of light. And it is this radiation that strikes the Earth and is going into the Earth deep down, and that's changing things. And this is what Edgar Cayce told us, that the pole shift that's going to come would be the result of these changes in the magma in the core of the planet. And what we've been reporting and we're working on right now is that there's a clear pattern that with this increased solar radiation, due to increased luminosity, and by the way, the sun is getting brighter. It's little, but a little goes a long way. And you can verify this yourself. So we have this growing solar luminance. The solar luminance is putting more radiation into the light. The more light is more radiation. And so where is it going and how is it manifesting? Well, the radiation is going into the core of the planet. It's not changing the temperature of the magma, and it's not changing the volume. What it's changing is velocity. How fast is the magma moving beneath the lithosphere? That has changed dramatically, and we're tracking that with the earthquake data sets that we've been using for several years now and have been monitoring. And so I call this crustal undulation. Imagine the crust of the earth is like the top of a jello mold, and you're walking and the mold is wiggling as you're walking with it, all right? Well, that's crustal undulation because the velocity is causing this unevenness, and so the result is we see sinkholes, land tearing, and earth trumpeting in places and in ways never before known in recorded history. And so all of this is happening beneath our feet. It is the veritable sniffle before the sneeze. And so when I get these letters from people that are going, I'm a consumer and I want instant gratification. If it's the end of life as we know it, I want the date so that I can go max out my credit cards before everything hits the fan. All right. People have that kind of approach to it. It's not going to work that way. The universe is not unfolding at the speed of human expectation.
Yeah.
But it is unfolding. And we're gonna feel it hard. And if Trump and the Patriots are successful, everybody has a fighting chance. And if the globalists and all their minions, including the Democrats and a lot of Republicans as well, if those people prevail, then you have a 5% chance of surviving. I'm serious. That's it. You have a 5% chance of surviving. And if you do survive, it is likely you'll be a slave for the rest of your life.
All right. Let's not go right into that just yet.
I understand.
I have a you can hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay. If the dwarf sun that's coming in has planets swinging around it, it's getting closer to the sun, is it not? Like
Well,
as it comes
it's
by?
getting to it's approaching, and it's a good question. It's approaching its point of perihelion. You have perihelion and aphelion in an orbit, and the perihelion is your closest distance. Aphelion is the furthest distance. And so when you're on an aphelion leg, you're approaching the larger object, and when you're on a perihelion leg, all right, excuse me, when you're on the perihelion leg, you're coming up towards that closest point. In the aphelion leg, you're going down. And this is a 3,600-year orbit. This system is in a comet-like orbit, which means it's much faster. It's a much faster mover than a planet like ours. And also, our planet orbits counterclockwise. The Nemesis system is in a clockwise orbit. And this is something that's consistent with comets. Comets can do this. And this is what we have to be mindful of, that this system is coming up in this 3,600-year orbit, and it's a long, long, long orbit. It's like, let's think of an old Slinky toy, or there was the old ties that have the wheels that go up and down the wire, all right? And it yo-yos up and down from deep in the southern skies where the Nemesis system spends most of its time. The northern is, it's a shortest period when it gets to the plane of the system, the galactic plane, and imagine the sun's equator and stretch that all the way out to the 12 constellations of the zodiac. That's the ecliptic. That's the plane of the system. And it's right now, I can tell that because of that 3-image object, it is now crossing or above the ecliptic, which means it's now going to start accelerating and accelerating, and it's going to get to a point where it has a whip acceleration. When it gets close to that perihelion point, closest to the sun, that's where it's just like if you go to a theme park and you ride the whip and you have that turnbuckles on each end and a long straight hall. And so you're sitting there on that long straight hall and you're waving at people trying to look excited, but it's really boring until you get to the turnbuckle, and then whew, you whip right around and you get that real sense of thrill.
Yeah, now wouldn't that affect the planets that are revolving around it? You know, the sun's gravity and the actual turn and everything, wouldn't that, mess up the planets, the orbital alignment around that as well? I mean, wouldn't it create chaos for itself?
No. Look at our major planets like Jupiter and Saturn and all of the moons that they have. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Those moons are in orbit around those planets. Now, if the planet's orbit is affected, it'll do the same for its satellites. And so this is really, Nemesis is the bad boy. That's the big bad boy. And the objects that are in orbit around her are orbit around it. Now, do they get affected? Yeah, there's going to be some, but principally they're captives, gravitational captives of the object that they're orbiting around. Now, this is not something that can go on indefinitely. In the 1950s, Japanese astronomer by the name of Yoshida Kozai developed the Kozai principle that describes what happens when you have two objects orbiting each other in space. And it really comes down to size. All right, the big one dominates, and the little one is going to have one of two eventual fates. The little one, if it's in an extreme comet-like orbit like what we have here, that little one is going to either circle the drain, so to speak, and slam into the big one, or it's going to be completely spun out of the system into deep space. So that's it. You crash and burn, or you go and freeze out in the hinterlands. That's the fate that you have. So yes, there's going to be changes. When I consider Nostradamus, and in his letter to his son, he was talking about the end of Earth, and which he's saying is about 1,600 years from now, as I recall. Well, that would be consistent with a flyby where the orbital duration of 3,600 years is altered because the Nemesis system this time in this flyby really starts to circle the drain. And it could be that there would have a situation where one of the moons or small planetoid in the Nemesis system, the Planet X system, in a close flyby could be peeled off, and then it's in an Earth crossing, or it's not going to hit the Earth. That's not what Nostradamus talked about. Nostradamus said we would be scorched. The surface of the Earth would be scorched. Well, if you have a large planet that smashes into the sun, you're going to have a solar storm event as a result of that. That certainly would just barbecue everything in the inner system. And Earth would be looking like another Venus or a Mars after that.
Yeah. Well, unless we got lucky and we were on the other side.
Absolutely, location is everything.
Yeah,
That's what they say in real estate. Location.
we could get lucky and the whole thing would eject the other way. You know, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, we could get lucky, but that's not what I'm hearing. You know, in 2008, Bob Dean, and he's a whistleblower. He learned about. See, I worked with whistleblowers on Planet X, and these are typically high-ranking sergeants, and they were the ones where you would have, these vaults with all your secrets. You have a secrets vault. Well, somebody's got to be the librarian. Somebody's got to operate that. So if you're an officer, you have your different security clearances. You walk up and say, I need this document. Here's my clearance, and there you go. Well, these sergeants were the ones that were doing all this stuff. And they weren't typically all that busy. They'd have huge amounts of free time. And what did they do? All of these guys started doing the same thing. They had the keys to the kingdom. They started opening drawers and reading files and learning stuff that just blew their minds. And so this is where I got a lot of the information. Bob Dean in 2008 said that his sources are predicting that we will be on the same side of the sun. And when it's on this, and let me be very clear, we're going to be on the same side of the sun. This is from the point of perihelion down to where it crosses the ecliptic, because it'll be from over the sun, it'll fly over our heads, then go down again into the southern skies, passing between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. And there's the problem for us, because then its planets and moons are going to be within reach of planets in the inner system. And, we could very well see, like in my book, Being in It for the Species, we talk about an impact between a moon that is orbiting Nibiru and the southern hemisphere of Venus, which would then throw tremendous and terrible debris our way and cause a lot of craziness. And I talk about that in my book, Being in It for the Species. I wrote that in 2013. I haven't seen anything in our science data that is deviating from what I wrote about in 2013 or in 2015 with Surviving the Planet X tribulation.
Now, do you think that there's life on the planets that are orbiting Nemesis?
That's what I write about extensively in Being. It is about, I talk about that. I talk about the Anunnaki and about how what this means for us and what we can do to deal with it. For a long time, I felt hopeless about all this because I could see what was happening. We were being set up to fail as a species so that we would die in vast numbers. And I'm starting to see a change that gives me a lot of hope that we don't have to meet that fate.
So the Anunnaki, that would be, they were, I guess, reportedly here helping with the Egyptians build the pyramid, that sort of thing. Like they're a more advanced race than we are.
You want to see an Anunnaki? Stand in a mirror. Stand before a mirror. We're a hybrid. We're a cross between, we were bred as slaves to mine gold. I mean, think about it. There's other substances that are worth more per ounce than gold. But shove a gold bar under somebody's nose, watch them turn into a complete babbling wah-wah boo-boo or whatever. I mean, they get gold fever. I know I had gold fever when I was a kid in college. I went out and trying to find gold and panning for it. Oh, my God.
Do you ever find any?
Let me put it to you this way. Huh? No, but I sure found a lot of busted shock absorbers. Actually, we found a vein, but it was only, at the time, it was 4%. And at the time, gold was $32 an ounce. And you had to have 5% in order to be economically viable. Today, 4% would be, that's it, jackpot bonanza, with gold being what it is. And I can't tell you how many nights I have spent laying there in bed going, now, where the hell did we find that? Because we did an assay report on it. And once we figure out, that's it, it's no money, we blew it off. And it's like, damn, we should have filed a claim.
Yowzers.
Who was to know? Back then, gold was $32 an ounce. And people had real jobs that paid real money, too.
Yeah. It's funny how that works, isn't it? The money in this country, I guess. I was reading something that, the average American really hasn't made any, hasn't had any kind of, the prices of everything keep going up, but our wages have pretty much sat there since like 1979 or something.
Yeah. I mean,
that's crazy. 1979. That's how are we supposed to, at what point do we reach the breaking point? I mean, are we getting there now? Goodness.
Oh, we're at the breaking point. We're going to break left or we're going to break right.
Yeah,
but Trump is rebuilding the economy. People don't understand it. They're all distracted by all the media coverage, the mainstream media. I was with CNN in the 80s. I was a news producer from 86 to 88.
Yeah, you used to work for Ted Turner, right?
I was under Ted Turner at the time. I can tell you that when I look at the CNN of today, I see a seditious propaganda mill. I don't see a real news network. Doesn't look like what I worked with. And,
all right. And
Turner is so far left. He makes Trump look like Mao Zedong, and he would have fired everybody that's on the air today. I mean, they would have been kicking rocks down the road. He would have fired them all, because when I was with CNN, you verified your sources. I mean, you had to do it the right way because they were competing against 50 other major news outlets. You had huge radio stations in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. They were so big, they had their own international correspondents. You don't see that anymore. Okay? It was. Because what happened was, after all of the presidents after Reagan and before Trump were globalists. And the first thing you have to do is you have to be able to dismantle the truth mechanism for people. And it was getting control of the fourth estate. And so to do that, they eliminated all the anti-concentration laws. Used to be you could only own one company could own, I think, 7 different news outlets, and that was it. And it was in a mix. And it worked extremely.
All right, let's just take a quick break here for a sec. We'll be right back after this. And we are back. Marshall, you still with us?
Yep.
And we lost you for a second there. I think we started talking about stuff that, to be honest, people really don't like us talking about. I've been doing, I was thinking about this episode last night when I started getting into this, and I thought, you know what? I don't know if I want to talk about Q and QAnon and the deep state stuff that's going on. I don't know if I want to talk about it because, it's frowned upon so much, and it really is a divisive topic. But I just don't understand. I just don't see how I would be doing justice if I was to just ignore this as a host. How can I just ignore something like this? So, if you don't mind, could you explain what is QAnon?
Well, QAnon right now is the most popular media on the planet. More people are following Q on 8chan in terms of audience size. The audience for Q is larger internationally than all of the mainstream media put together. And if you're going to research Q, you're going to find over 2,500 attack articles that have been published specifically by the left. Who is Q, and what is the meaning of all this? Q is, and you have to see that we are right now in America's second civil war, and it's part of a much larger freedom movement. So if you're looking at MAGA, Brexit, Yellow Jackets, these are people who are wanting a freedom movement. And for those people who are saying, smearing it, accusing it, ignoring it, scoffing it, answer me one question. You had the courage to ask me what's Q. Have you ever seen anyone in the mainstream media just ask the president or anyone in the White House that same question? Have you ever seen the mainstream media ask the president, is Q real? Have you?
No. That's what I don't understand. How are people not asking questions?
Yeah. So why are they not asking the question? That's the right, now you're on the right approach. Well, what's happening is, and we're seeing, look at the suppression that's happening. I can tell you where all the suppression in Planet X started. It started in, I believe, July of 2017. Blood Moon Triad. You ever heard of Blood Moon Triad?
Yeah, that's the blood moons that are happening, right? And that.
Right.
Is that what you're
Right.
talking about? Yeah.
Well, on the month that it was forecasted of a major prophetic Christian event, a prophecy to come fulfilled would happen in 2017. And in that month of the blood moon triad, more people researched the topic of Planet X, Nibiru, Nemesis. More people in that 1 month researched it. And here's the interesting facts. That 1 month volume was greater than all of the search inquiries since Google was formed and went live on Planet X. And I'm including the entire 2012 Mayan calendar period. In 1 month, more people read about Planet X than in the history of the world. And here's the other fact that's interesting. They were all Christians. And when the deep state globalists saw this, it made their skin crawl, because if there's one thing they fear is that Christians would set aside their differences and come together on something, in agreement, find a consensus. And that consensus turns out to be Planet X. It's a unifier amongst Christians, and that's it. You no longer have these, Catholics on one side, Protestants on the other side, and you know exactly why there's been a Northern Ireland. Okay? You don't have this divisiveness. It's one topic that all Christians, of no matter what walk they come from, they all agree on it, and they all come together on it. And ever since then, guys like myself have been under constant suppression and attack. So I'm very sympathetic with your thoughts of saying, I don't know if I want to talk about this, because a lot of people catch heat. Okay? I sure caught the heat. And it has been unrelenting, and it built to a crescendo. And I'm not the only one. See, the whole strategy since 2017 has been very simple. The deep state, the mainstream media, the social mafia, the social media mafia in Silicon Valley. It's been a very simple strategy. If you push fear, they don't care. They don't care what kind of fear you push. All right? They just want you to push fear. If you push fear, they'll push traffic to you. If you do not push fear, they will push you under. And so what they have done in the Planet X field is that they have really eliminated or pretty much silenced all of the objective voices. And what you have is a lot of fear porn and clickbait, and that's intentional, because fear porn and clickbait is salacious. It's designed to move traffic, but in the final analysis, it's empty-handed. And when people look at it and look at it and look at it and follow it and follow it and follow it and follow it, and then they feel like they're eating lettuce. You got to eat a ton of lettuce to get a few net calories. And they feel like they're eating lettuce, and at a point they just say, well, this is just all contrived nonsense, and they go off. And see, it used to be, for guys like me, my audience were the people who got tired of all the clickbait, and they were just looking for folks like me or Shep over at IntelliHub, who were just, reporting the science and trying to explain things without all the hype and the fear porn and the salacious speculation and all this nonsense. We're the kind of people, one thing you're not going to hear from someone like me is I'm going, oh, wow, look at that. Is that amazing? Hey, what do you think? Say in the comments below. That's such happy bullshit. People who have the nerve to say that have no respect for the intelligence of their audience or of their need to be well informed on the most critical topic of the day. And that's just the way it is. But it's going to change. Because Trump signed an executive order. Twitter, it was just like, Wait for him to go a bridge too far. Wait for that straw that breaks the camel's back. We've been complaining for 3 years about social media, about the Silicon Valley mafia, and finally they went a bridge too far. And Trump signed an executive order, and they blew it off. Oh, well, it's blah, 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 the blah, blah, blah. Judge Napolitano came out and panned it, hadn't even read it, came out and panned it. Yeah, that's the thing about Napolitano. He plays so that guy is not loyal to anybody but himself. He plays both sides of the street. He's just wherever, he's an entertainer. He's a bullshit guy. You want somebody who's going to tell you what really is happening legally in Washington, Debbie Georgatos. Can we talk? That's who you listen to. Those are the kinds of people you listen to. You know, not Napolitano. He's a freaking clown. That's all he is. But this whole thing is going to shape up very well because, and what I have learned, and it just excites me, I can't tell you how delighted I am, is that not only has the Department of Justice initiated antitrust suits against Google, and this is confirmed because they go to they retain outside counsel as a part of that. That counsel has been retained. That was the first shoe to fall. The second shoe to fall is that this is not some deep state flunky mole that's in the DOJ or somebody that is, you know, doesn't know how to stand and fight the fight. You know, they're political. It's like they're always thinking of their own future. Now, on this one, AG Barr personally is overseeing this. There's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah. So what's going on? What's happening?
Huh?
So what's going on? What's happening? You know, you're talking about a civil war that's happening right now. Who's fighting who?
Well, it's in America, the Civil War actually has come down to exactly the same two sides that you had during the first Civil War. The first Civil War was you had Democrats versus Republicans. The South was principally Democrat. The Democrats were pro-slavery party. They were the ones that fought hard to keep, to prevent the emancipation of blacks. And it was the Republicans who were the anti-slavery party of Lincoln. And, you know, it was a hard-fought battle. I mean, I would suggest for people that you go watch the movie Lincoln. That'll really inform you as to who's real slavers and who's not. The Democrat Party, slavers from the South, and they wanted to keep slavery. And what we have is the Democrat Party is now moved out of the South, and it's gone to the coasts. And so it's gone from being a pro-slavery to a slavery for all. Because where's Trump getting his support? Not from Republicans, hard conservatives. I mean, you know, willy-nillys, and they're all busy, you know, renewing their country club memberships. But I'm talking about where he really got his base of support is from all the hardworking people that watched their lives destroyed because globalists shipped their jobs over to China and then sent their children to endless wars. And what do they get back? Body bags, drug dealers, and food stamps. And the people who live on the coasts were not in these manufacturing flyover states. They really didn't feel the pain. So they could have their kumbaya, we're morally superior moment. We're saving the world from useless eaters. But it's the people who are sitting there in little towns that only a post office could find. And they have one factory in town. and everybody busts their ass to make it a profitable factory, and it is. And the globalists, I saw this in the computer business. Carly Fiorina, when she was Hewlett Packard, she was the globalist slut of the universe. Okay? Mm-hmm. Carly Fiorina was the globalist slut of the universe. Because she took all these little factories that were keeping entire towns alive and incredibly profitable, and she didn't care about the profit. She was a globalist. Her job was to export everything to China, so China would become the center of the world and all supply chains. And so they would go in and just scoop up these factories and send them overseas. And they were brutal. One time I met a man whose job was to actually pack up the factories. And they sent him in a small town that had been a compact plant. And it was after Thanksgiving. Everyone was pink slipped, given 2 weeks' pay, and that was it. And everyone was unemployed on Christmas Day. And this is a town that had fought. Everybody had worked together to make that one of the most profitable plants HP ever owned.
Yeah,
they didn't care.
I think everybody's seeing because of this what I call the Rona going around. Everybody's seen that having all the supply chains in China is probably not really a good idea.
Never was. Never was.
Yeah, but now the people are awake to it.
Now people are seeing that, more particularly is, look what's happening, the suppression of free speech, tech giants actually throttling the free speech of the most powerful leader of the free world. Twitter actually sets itself above everyone else that it can judge and punish. The most powerful leader of the free world. What in the hell is this?
Yeah, right. Like, who do they think they are, right?
Yeah.
In fairness to Twitter and YouTube, I mean, it is their website. It would be no different than you and I having a website, and you and I decide what we want on our website. Right?
Wrong. If you get on a website and you smear me with lies, you're a publisher. I can sue you. If you have something worth getting, that is. But what they're doing is they're using Section 230. And Section 230 says you don't have liability as long as you're an impartial public forum. But they're not. They're propagandists, publishers. They're picking and choosing who gets what. They're picking and choosing who's being seen. It's their website, but they're in violation of law. They have taken 230 and completely stretched it and redefined the law to work effectively in a way that the law does not read. They're in violation. They're fudging.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's not like you. I can sue you. I can't sue Google.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
Not that I would. You're a nice kid.
No. But yeah. I mean, you answered my point pretty well. I guess. Yeah, that's different. I'm not working my site with this law saying I could do what I want, but I still have this law on my side. Because apparently, I don't have this law on my side. It's my website. You can sue me. But yeah, you're right. It seems
That's
like.
right.
Now, who set that up? Who put that in place?
Well, they put that in place. It was particularly for message boards. In the 1990s, this was the big meeting place for people to share opinions were message boards. And at that time, this was before Simple Machines Forum, And there were some proprietary models, Discus and so forth. And I used a lot of these message boards where you have a lot of people coming and sharing their opinions, like on Planet X Town Hall. And so we were actually Section 230 compliant 6 months before the law was passed. All right. And I had set, very clear terms of service and rules and what you could do. I mean, my philosophy is, hey, if you want to write a post about the 5 things you need to know about gay extraterrestrial marriage, have fun. Do it objectively. Don't attack. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Be factual, verify your sources, be a responsible netizen journalist. And so the Planet X Town Hall was, for many years, for a decade, it was a tent post in the Planet X community. People knew they could go find honest conversations. Maybe they weren't finding the depth or what they wanted specifically, but what they did find was honest and straightforward. All right? And now the Planet X Town Hall is not doing well because the lady who was the administrator has a raging case of Trump derangement syndrome. And after she deleted 99% of the membership without a backup, she resigned on me because she didn't like my Q articles. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was busy fighting, keeping that site up was difficult because a lot of attacks I was really, spent all my time dealing with the barbarians at the gate. And I fought the barbarians off and I won there, but what was happening on the inside undermined me. And that's how communists work. Communism's always about infiltration and subversion. So I was infiltrated and subverted by the one person I, depended on to keep an honest dialogue on the town hall.
Yeah,
it was a difficult thing. I view it as temporary insanity.
I was reading an article that had just come out probably a couple weeks ago, and it said that the Chinese president had announced that he's ready and prepared to lead the New World Order. So that's basically what we're up against, isn't it? We're up against. I mean, China has bought its way into this country. They probably control the news, Google. They control the mainstream media, and they're really the puppet masters in charge of all these strings. Is that what you think?
I think everything we see is kabuki theater. That's what I think. Everything is kabuki theater. And it wouldn't surprise me to learn that what we have actually is an agenda with an agenda. Now, the globalists, their plan was very simple. China would become the manufacturing hub of the world, the universal supply chain, and then they would be able to dominate and control the world economy. And let's look at the effect of that, all right, of concentrating that power with the Kung flu or coronavirus or the China flu. It's China flu. Now, this flu was bioengineered in a lab because no one's been able to prove otherwise. And there are aspects to it that suggest that. But even if you say maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, what's undisputable is that it was released in Wuhan. The Chinese knew it was released. And what they then did was they started buying up all of the stockpiles of PPE in the world, protective personal equipment, gowns and masks. And then, while they're doing this, they're not letting people come in, but they're sending people from Wuhan everywhere into the world to spread the virus. And so the net result is millions of people are affected. There's an immediate need for PPE. And in the United States, what do we have? Obama intentionally left the cupboard bare. There was nothing for Trump. They didn't have PPE. They didn't have ventilators. They didn't have much of anything. And we were really dependent. And so a mask that would cost 35 cents is now $8 because China's got them, and that's what you got to pay. What did Trump do? He moved the manufacturing on PPE, ventilators, other gear, medicines, and he moved it all the way back to the United States. And they lost all of that. So instead of, and you know, what did we do? Instead of using their tests, which are programmed to fail tests, the Chinese were giving tests that would yield positive results. I mean, they had one leader in Africa was able to test a goat and a cantaloupe or something. I mean, it was like weird stuff, and it comes up positive with COVID.
Yeah, I saw that. I think it was a papaya or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
That,
so
that
I mean,
tested
this
positive.
whole thing.
Do you think that the first initial tests were tainted with the virus?
Absolutely. I think what they're going to see is they're going to start really digging into this. There are a lot of the people in America right now who have been tragically affected by this. Imagine your parent or your grandparent, great-grandparent, someone in your family that you love, and they were murdered by one of these Democrat governors who said, you have to take sick COVID patients and put them back in the nursing homes and you can't test them. That was done intentionally to create death blooms. They knew that the aged were the most vulnerable, and so if they could get those nursing homes contaminated, there'd be a lot of people dying. And it was the way that they died that was so tragic. They couldn't die with their loved ones standing around them. They couldn't hold hands. They couldn't feel a kiss. There was no words whispered of tender love, no being a family together. These people just died alone with no care. And their families were hostage to this vile corruption. It was unnecessary. We had hospital ships in Los Angeles and New York, virtually unused. But these people were sent to die for the sake of statistics.
Yeah, I mean, all they had to do was send these. If they just sent the elderly patients to the ship or to the field hospital in Central Park, then they could have saved a lot of people that were in these nursing homes. It seems.
That's right.
And they
but
just,
it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't understand why they did that.
What they wanted was numbers, huh?
I said I don't understand why they did that. Yeah.
Numbers. It was numbers. Let me tell you my own personal experience. I had COVID. Okay? And I know exactly where I contracted it. Exactly. In a hospital screening room. I had, this winter coming up, I decided I didn't want to have any colds or flus. And so beginning in the fall, I started taking every day a regime. First thing in the morning, I'd have take an airborne tablet, 1 gram of seed, drop it in a cup of hot water and have a tea. And then I'd have a large dose of chelated zinc. So it's chelated zinc and Z every day. I had no cold, no flu, no nothing. Nothing. I was completely impervious. And then they started to lock down. I'm in a ranch in the middle of nowhere. I'm not, so isolating for me was easy because I'm already isolated. But I had to go for a minor surgical procedure to the emergency room, completely unrelated to COVID. And I went in and I said, here, this is, I pointed at it. Yeah, I need a doc to look at this. And she said, are you sick? This, that. I said, no, all I got is this. I need that. I'm perfectly healthy. I don't have any symptoms otherwise. She said, okay, follow me. She walks me down to this distant room. And next thing I know, I'm sitting in this room that's been cordoned off for COVID screening. And I have to spend an hour and a half in this room waiting for this COVID screening. And the nurse comes in, takes my temperature and says, what the hell are you doing here? You don't have a temperature. Why did you tell the nurse you have a temperature? I said, I never told her any such thing. I don't have a temperature, never did. What in the hell am I doing here? And he was like, oh, he's disgusted. So fine, I'll get the doctor to look at you. And what does the doctor do? Instead of doing my procedure in a regular area of the emergency room, it was a minor procedure. The doctor did it right in the COVID-19 screening room. And 12 days later, exactly, boom, I come down with symptoms. But because I'd been doing this prophylactic treatment of zinc and vitamin C, when it did hit me, it only lasted about 6 hours. And it started with the fever, sore throat, and then the fever really started to rage. And I laid down and I was pouring sweat. I mean, just pouring sweat. And I was at the point where I'm starting to think, okay, I need to give a call to a friend and, go have myself checked. And about the time I'm debating whether or not to get a friend to take me back to the hospital where I got the frickin' disease in the first place, it snapped, broke. That was it. Fever broke. Boom. And that was it. It was over. I was and that was it. No more symptoms. I was over it. All right. And so I was a needless victim. And I was victimized in the hospital. Why? Because that nurse was told we need as many COVID reports as possible because they were losing money everywhere else. All the routine procedures, they're not doing them anymore. They can't do anything. And so the sole source of money for these hospitals, to keep them going was COVID and COVID related. So if you could get a COVID patient report, a suspect, you could get a COVID treatment. If you got them on a ventilator, cash cow, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. So everything was set up to financially reward the bad behavior of hospitals to help create a false impression. So this was very much a pandemic. And I experienced it firsthand. And when I talk with people on the left about this and I share my experience, it's like vapor trails. It's like mountains of UFO pictures. We'll see about that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Hey, there it is.
So what do you think Q is trying to do?
Q is trying to free us. What's happening right now is a global freedom movement. I call it the Great War to End All Slavery. I put up a podcast on that, titled just that way. And that's what it's really all about, folks, is that we are standing at a fork in the road. Let me be clear to those of you out there listening to me. If you haven't already said, he's on the right, he's a conservative, he's a deplorable, he's a useless eater, and you've already gone off. So you're still around. All right? This is your fight. You have skin in the game. Because if the globalists win, you have a 5% chance of surviving, and if you do, you'll be a slave. And if the freedom movements, what I collectively refer to as the alliance, prevail, you got a fighting chance. You got a fighting chance to be free and stay free. And see, here's the point, folks. Freedom is not something you order with Amazon Prime. Freedom is something you fight for each and every day. And the minute you stop fighting, evil will prevail. And that's the lesson America is learning right now. We've been good little consumer bees and we've been asleep at the switch. And now we're starting to see how deep and dark this rabbit hole is. And these people who hold out their moral position that subordinates us as useless eaters. And what are they doing? They're burning down cities, pulling down statues. You see Democrats taking a knee to these violent protesters who hurt people, kill people, destroy businesses, destroy homes, destroy everything. And when you see Nancy Pelosi take a knee to her, I only have one question in my mind. Is Nancy Pelosi taking a knee to them, or is she taking a knee to the God she prays to, namely Satan? Yeah, think about it.
That's a whole nother way of looking at it. The whole good versus evil, and I'll tell you, when we first started this coronavirus lockdown, everybody was all, "Oh, Tiger King! Remember the Tiger King this, Tiger King that." And it seems like what happened after that is that my wife and I, we watched this show called Out of the Shadows on YouTube. Have you seen that?
Not yet.
It's about how the CIA started up a project to infiltrate the TV and the entertainment industry and everything else to basically
Oh yeah, familiar with that. Yes.
yeah, like run, to basically program our minds into believing certain things about the CIA or about the 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 planet that we live in. Everything about life. We're basically learning because the CIA wants us to. It's all about.
That's right.
It's all about. It's something called. I think it was Project Mockingbird. I think. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it was. And there's actual proof that this is going on today, and it goes to explain how. As many people that we see worshiping the Lord, God, there's just as many people that are worshiping the other side, the satanic side. And that's
Yes.
the side that we're
Matter of
not
fact, we've got a
seeing.
big parade coming up.
A big what?
There's a big Satan thing coming up, a parade. They're going to have a big public thing about it.
Well, I mean, a lot of this is kept in the shadows, I guess. And what do you think about Q as far as it seems to me that I've gone and looked at some Q posts. It seems to me like it's really religious. It's a religious movement, is it
Well,
not?
it's the Q movement is dominated by Christianity, but it is a movement that is not solely Christian. And to its credit, with the Q movement, people all around the world from different walks of life, different faiths, different beliefs are part of this international movement. They're saying where we go one, we go all. So this is mostly a Christian fight. They're the most mobile and active group in this. But what I can tell you is no matter what walk of life you come from or your faith, when you walk with the Patriots, you don't walk behind. You walk abreast. And that's what's really important. Everyone walks abreast. And so, yes, this is largely, remember I told you, Blood Moon Triad, all of a sudden Planet X, Christianity mobilizes. All right, there you go. And there is, they can't talk about this. Trump could never come out and say anything about Planet X without definitely, that's it. He'd be toast. But
Well, it's because, a lot of the
doesn't
scientists
mean
are
he
on
doesn't
board
know
with
about it. Huh?
a lot of the scientists are on board with the opposite of that. You get a lot of scientists, and those scientists are only going to get the government funding if they do and say what the government wants them to do and say. Isn't that true?
Well, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. Years ago, there were a group of astronomers who were actually working on this very heavily, and they were taking a ski lift to the observatory, and they were all in this one ski lift. Cable car. And they're riding the cable car, and an American A7 intruder, supposedly on a training mission, all of a sudden comes in, flying right down on the deck, and cuts the cable with its wing. The cable car falls to the ground, and everyone on board is killed. And deep space astronomy was devastated that day. Deep space astronomy was totally devastated. That was a huge loss of talented people.
And this was
so,
what observatory was this?
Got remember, you'd have to look. This is in Italy, okay? So this is some years back, but you can research it and you can find it. And for astronomers, you have to understand is that there is a real sentence of death on this. And there's just, we see this going on all the time. You see it elsewhere too. Look, for example, what pharma's doing with the FDA and how they use the FDA as their own Nazi thugs. And you have companies that are selling natural solutions that really cure health problems. And they're destroyed, and these doctors die these bizarre, ugly deaths, stabbing themselves in the back 25 times before they throw themselves off of a high-rise building. And then it's labeled suicide. All right? So we see this kind of stuff happening, these kind of controls. And, when you have people say, well, that's conspiracy theory, that's conspiracy theory, that's conspiracy theory, that's conspiracy theory. Do you know who invented the term conspiracy theory?
Well, it was the CIA.
Yes. And they invented it to discredit whistleblowers and honest people speaking truth to power.
Well, it's pretty interesting to hear about. That's for sure.
When you accuse somebody of being a conspiracy theorist, you're saying, this is an honest person, don't believe them. That's literally what you're saying when you use the term.
Yeah, like, how dare you question what we say?
The programming. Yeah. Yeah. That's how deep the programming is. But it's going to change. People are waking up. They understand you can't buy freedom with Amazon Prime, that there is a price to pay. And the silent majority is becoming a much bigger silent majority. And people are looking at what's happening. They're afraid to speak. If you do, you can be completely and utterly destroyed. I mean, it is just, let me just read. This is, I just put up an article why I'm hanging up the phone on my liberal friends. And in there, I have a quote from Kamala Harris on June 18, 2020. And Kamala Harris said this. She said, and once Trump's gone and we have regained our rightful place in the White House, look out if you supported him and endorsed his actions, because we'll be coming for you next. You will feel the vengeance of a nation. No stone will be left unturned as we seek you out in every corner of this great nation. For it is you who have betrayed us. Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I heard her say, yeah, I heard that. I did I did see that.
I mean,
That's a pretty ballsy statement. You know, that's what
ballsy.
I don't understand. I don't understand
What
how
about that?
these
That is
people.
an outright threat. That's not ballsy. That's outright intimidation. That's KGB. That's that's FEMA cops showing up at 1 o'clock in the morning to bust you.
Yeah, for what? For having an opinion?
Yeah, because this is the age of communist social re-education camps. And we already have them all across the country and have for decades. They're called colleges and universities. Look what happens to conservative students. The abuse, the horrible abuse that they get. And what do we have? We have schools that are way overpriced, children in debt bondage on student loans they can never get out of from bankruptcy. The whole educational system has been corrupted by the communist strategy of infiltration and subversion.
Yeah,
And we're dealing with that.
I definitely
But the
think that
thing
this
of it
country
is,
has been infiltrated.
right, but all of this works as long as nobody knows what's going on. If nobody knows what's going on, this all works like it's clockwork. It's clockwork. And the communists do it again and again and again and again, have over the years. And what has happened is with Trump and the Patriots, they've thrown a total wrench in the works. The globalist plans are meeting resistance and they're floundering because everything they're doing to attack Trump is failing. But if the Democrats win, the nation will look like Seattle. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of people in denial, and a lot more people are going to go, hell no, screw this.
Do you think it's going to come to an armed conflict?
I write an article in there that says the White House must burn. And right now, and I lay out the reasons why. Read the article, why the White House must burn. And what do we have right now? They have already tried in Washington to set up another one of these free zones. Okay?
Yeah,
like
that's
they did in
the
Seattle.
Black
They
White
want
House.
to do
I think.
another. Pardon?
Or the Black House, I think they're calling it, right?
The Black House, whatever, and all this stuff, and they want to take over. The first time that they were going to do this is Antifa is it follows. It is financed by George Soros. Soros is a World War II Nazi collaborator. Has hated America all his life because he's a devoted Nazi. And he wants to see the destruction of our Constitution and our way of life. And he's funding this. And what they did was they started building up for the first main confrontation, and Q actually undermined and prevented the attack because the Patriots they own the underverse. The globalists created this system of spying on us with the NSA, and now Trump and the Patriots have the key to the kingdom. They own the system. And guess what, kiddies? FISA works both ways.
Yeah, yeah.
They've been monitoring everything. And so Q just released code words from the Soros Antifa battle plan to destroy the White House in Washington and to take it over, turn it into the Black House. All right? And because once Soros saw that all of his plans had been compromised, when you know your attack has been compromised, you have to stop. That's it. And does that mean they're going to stop the effort? No. Soros has an infantile Nazi fantasy of seeing the White House burn and of seeing Trump and Pence hanging from a noose. Okay?
Yeah, and who's
He
president?
wants to
Who's president
the
then?
president and the vice president. He wants to burn the White House, and he wants America destroyed. And that's what he wants. And so right now, Antifa is reorganizing to come back for the next attack. Trump has held off the first one. He's held off the second one with the statues. Soros is not going to quit. The mayor of D.C. has made the White House a clear target. She said to the White House, get the National Guard out of the town. You're not welcome here anymore. And open up the White House so it's available on all sides to all citizens, with no police protection, no protections at all. The city's not going to protect. City's just going to create a a gold brick road for all the rioters and the Antifa thugs that aim straight to the White House. And that's what they're going to want to build up to. And the reason why I say in the article, let the White House burn, is Soros is going to want to provoke a huge slaughter, a crisis, so that they can blame it on Trump. And what they're going to do is they're going to take a whole bunch of these snowflake idiots and shove them up against the fence so that they can defend the world against useless eaters. And behind them is going to be Antifa weapons teams. They already use weapons. If they're doing a protest, they stage crowbars, bricks, Molotov cocktails. They already set small armories of this stuff all over the place.
Yeah, I've seen videos people posting. I'm gonna interrupt you. I saw videos people were posting about how when these protests were going on in these cities, these pallets of bricks were just mysteriously piling up everywhere. Whole pallets of bricks. Now, how is it that we don't have, we have cameras running that can, see, anybody walking down the road, but we don't have any idea who's dropping off these pallets of bricks?
The Democrat mayors do.
Son of a bitch. All right, we're going to take a break and get him back in just a second. Yeah, I was just actually just on there. I was like, boy, I've never had so many problems happening with my system. That's the second time. It's just stopped the call, and it's just amazing to me how it happens when we talk about stuff like this. Boy, we must be hitting on some keywords that the system's not liking.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Sorry.
Welcome to my world.
So, man, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it just seems like we're definitely in for a ride.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, we're going.
Okay, we're in for a ride, and what's going to happen is, and this is the reason why we got cut off, because I'm just now going to explain to you exactly how Soros wants to overthrow the country. This Nazi, is, sitting there, Mein Fuhrer, we're going to win, ultimate victory. He's going off on his thing. All right. What he wants to do is, like I said, they're going to pack all of these snowflakes out to save the world from useless eaters. And they're going to be, yelling and screaming, and they're feeling the power. It has nothing to even do anymore with intelligent or rational thought. It's power. It's power. This is like right in the groin kind of sexual power, cool power. People are taking a knee to us power. Okay? That's what that's what they're going to be going for. But Soros, what he really wants to do is provoke a massacre with federal troops. And so You have provocateurs. And this time, instead of it being bricks and bats and Molotov cocktails, it's going to be light machine guns, RPGs, and mortars. And they're actually going to do what they can to provoke a firefight with federal troops defending the White House that would create a massacre. Hundreds of these snowflakes blowing up left and right like hot watermelons in the sun. Okay? Ugly sight. And if, they're banking on if America sees this happening, they're not going to care why. It'll just be outrage, and that'll be the end of the government. And the globalists prevail because they've created rage. They're going to do this because they got the bit in their teeth. This is what they want to do. And they don't deviate from plans. What is Trump going to do? Trump is going to do the smart thing. He's not going to kill a bunch of stupid snowflakes. He'll just let them burn the White House down. Much easier to rebuild a building than to rebuild a nation. The White House was burned to the ground in 1812. War of 1812 was in 1814. The British burned it down. We chased the British out, and we rebuilt it, and we soldiered on. And that's what's going to happen this time. And when Americans see the White House burning, it is going to shock the nation to its core. To its core. And we're going to have an existential moment to say, who do we want to be? Do we want to be free? Or do we want to be communist slaves?
Yeah.
Very simple, black and white. That's what I see coming. I think the nation is swinging very much in favor. And right now, the sum of all fears is happening for the globalists because the judge who's Sullivan, who's obviously, he's an Obama sycophant, and Obama, picked up the phone, called this guy, said, hey, drag this out, stall, buy time. Let me see what we can do to shut this down. Flynn is their nightmare. It's the reason why they went after Flynn before they even went after anyone else. Because Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. He knows where the closets are, and he knows who has the keys. That's why they want to shut him down. And once this case is finally dismissed, no more gag order. And that is when Flynn is going to come forward, and it's just going to be gut-wrenching. Just absolutely gut-wrenching. He will be the Punisher. And then, things are going to change. But it's also, it's not where we're prevailing and we know it's going to be better. All this is going to do, the deep state is going to take such a heavy hit that they're going to do something violent and extreme, because starting war, and that's what they want to do. They're going to want to provoke a war, get us into a war with North Korea, get us into a war somewhere else. Wars are a great way to paper over all kinds of sins. And that's what they use. They use war to do it. Trump doesn't like wars. All right? Who does?
Wow, that's
Rich people like it. Their kids don't die. They don't come back in body bags or in wheelchairs for the rest of their lives. They just, hey, money, 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 and they don't care.
Yeah, you can't make money on bombs if they're not using them.
That's it. They're just using people. So this is, we're in a turning point here. And I believe that this second civil war will be won by the people. but they're going to be back. The globalists will be back. They're like T-1000 Terminators. Freeze them, bust them, shock them, do whatever you want. They reconstitute and they come back and they follow their programming. And the only way it's really going to stop the globalists and the central bankers behind them, the Rothschilds, is a debt jubilee on all central bank fiat currency. Imagine if Trump were to say, anything fiat currency, all debts, public and private, are forgiven. The government suddenly no longer buried in debt. Kids with these horrible student loans, they're free. Families struggling to get by and living on credit cards, they're free. Everyone's free, no debt. And they'll replace it with the currency backed in gold, and we will never borrow money at interest from anyone ever again. Gold and a jubilee will be a double shotgun blast that will end it once and for all. Anything short of that, they will reform, they will come back, and the future generation will have to deal with it.
Well, something that happened that nobody really talks about is that Donald Trump has taken control of the Fed, hasn't he?
Absolutely.
With the emergency order. I mean, it's the Treasury has taken that in now, I think.
That's right. See, up to now, the Federal Reserve, a lot of people think it's an official, part of the government. It's not.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve is a privately owned corporation, and it is held by bankers in the Crown. The Crown is a sovereign state within the City of London. It's like Vatican City, or even like Washington, D.C. All right. And so it's a city state. You have 3 city states. And you have the Vatican city state, you have the Crown city state, and then you have here in Washington, D.C. District of Columbia is another city state. And what Trump has done is he has completely undermined one leg. And once you undermine it, it's like a 3-legged stool. It's not gonna be so stable. It's gonna start to topple. So a lot of governments are probably watching and waiting on the sideline. They want to see how things go, what America is going to do with this. But and there are people, oh man, Trump it's bull and he's not going to do anything, and no. And again, that's people thinking at the speed of consumers, instant gratification. Oh, that's good. Click. I get it with Prime. Done deal. Buy it. What's the next thing? Okay. Doesn't work that way. Just the wheels of justice turn slowly. And they're turning. And major things are happening. And once Flynn, and I'm going to tell you something. I was talking to other guys like myself, like Shep at IntelliHub. And in the lead up, on the Flynn case, in the lead up to Department of Justice withdrawing the charges, in the 2 months up to that, absolutely unparalleled oppression, suppression, and abuse. I mean, it was awful. And it was after DOJ dropped the case, and then President Trump signed the executive order on social media, we started to see some relief. They're still hassling. They're doing it now in this interview. And it's automation, not some minder sitting there. It's an artificial program that decoded a buzzword and immediately followed the programming. One of the things that I personally feel, and I think it's a prevalent attitude in the Q community, is it's time for the CIA to end. That agency is so hopelessly corrupt. The only way to fix it is to end it.
Yeah, just get rid of it. You know that
Yeah.
that's actually not a bad idea. I think there was another there was another president that wanted to get rid of the CIA. Wasn't that Kennedy?
hmm Kennedy was assassinated because he was going against the central bankers. And it's also argued that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated for the same reason. Okay? Because the real slavers of the world are these deep state bankers, the central bankers. And they're into everywhere. But they're being undermined. When Trump took the Federal Reserve and took it into the Treasury is accountable to the president. And now that, the Federal Reserve is a part of the Treasury, it too is accountable. And the reason, and this gives Trump access to the same tools of manipulation the deep state and the central bankers have been using against us for decades. He has their weapons. Not only does he have their weapon, think about it, Trump has their weapons, he has the underverse with the NSA to spy on us, okay? And what is he doing with the world trade? And this is completely off the radar. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. If you want to know why China is really upset these days, is that, and they were going to be the globalist leaders of the world, that all supply chains start in China. And all of a sudden that's going away. And one of the reasons why is Trump and Pompeo have been quietly going around the world making trade deals. Trump, we've all heard of the Chinese, their plan, Belt and Road Plan, okay? And they're following the old trade routes. And they want to establish themselves in the Indochina theater as the dominant trading source for the whole world. All right. Well, what Trump has been doing is Trump has been going to these same nations with an American belt, with a road and belt for the American thing. The American plan is actually global. It's just not only Indochina, it's much bigger than that, encompasses a huge swath of the world. And unlike the Chinese model, which gives the Chinese a whole lot of advantages to subjugate and abuse other partners, the deals Trump making with these other nations is free trade. They're getting rid of tariffs altogether. Nations can just trade with each other freely. And one nation after another is signing up for this. And that's what the Chinese are saying. Their whole dream of being the world economic end-all, be-all is over. Trump is destroying it.
And it makes you wonder if they didn't release this virus on purpose.
They did. It was released on purpose. All right. And it's part of because there's a threat. Okay. And they're responding. They're thugs, and their thugs don't like being threatened. They like to be the ones doing the threatening. And so we're seeing all of this stuff. Are we going to see, I think the key word of the day is hydroxychloroquine. We're going to find out we had a therapy all along. All of these people didn't have to die. Senseless deaths. And why? Big Pharma, Bill Gates, mainstream media. They were all panning it and saying, bad, bad, evil, evil, evil. Been out there for 50 years. I have a goddaughter who had to take it for 2 years. I asked her, I said, what's it like to take? Are there side effects? She said, no, it's like taking an aspirin, a baby aspirin, actually.
is what she said.
Well, I'm sure,
And
like
yet,
any medicine, it has a side effect to a small percentage of the people, I'm sure.
it has a side effect. If you are taking the drug for a period of 5 years or more, every day, steadily, you do run a risk of loss of vision. But you've got to take it every day. Maximum dose for 5 years. So if you're giving it to somebody for 5 days, I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, hey, if you swallow a whole bottle of baby aspirin, that's going to whack you. All right. So you have to be practical about this thing. And people are going to learn that there was a lot of people died needless deaths. We had something, and it was suppressed by the media. The media is going to be pummeled on this, along with many other issues. But the mainstream media is just going to be totally pummeled on this because they enabled murder. There's no other way. It's not unfortunate deaths. Oh, they're seniors. They only had a little time left. So, hey, what the big deal? It's all moral equivalency. Now, if your grandmother or your parent died alone when you could have been there to hold his or her hand, people don't forget something like that. Not when they've been lied to with this absolute malevolent suppression of hydroxychloroquine. But there's also going to be more drugs that are going to come out. And we're also going to start learning other things. I think this is going to blow the lid on immunizations. In Africa, there are a lot of people that want Bill Gates arrested and hung.
Yeah.
He went in there to Africa to say, I want to save a whole lot of people. They killed many, 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 many more people in Africa with the immunizations that they gave them than the numbers of people who were dying from the disease they were being immunized against. Gates went out there and slaughtered people.
Yeah, and what
Start coming out.
What professional doctor diploma does Gates have? I mean, isn't he? He just created a computer program. Like, how is he an expert on medical? I don't understand how that's. You know what I mean?
It's the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules.
I just don't understand how Bill Gates can.
They have the money. They have the money to do it. That's all you have to understand. If you want to spread lies, kill people, do whatever, and you've got a lot of money and you got a lot of pull, you can do it. You can do it. Because for a lot of years now, our American government has been up for sale. And that's what really pisses the globalists more than anything else. They bought a government and they damn well expect that government to stay bought, and Trump's not playing along. And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I guess what comes next. I just have a feeling that we're just going to see one big event after another until November.
And I agree with you. I think you have a good assessment. Because they're desperate. What they have to do is fight for the globalists right now, their number one weapon system is the mainstream media. All right. Now I'm saying this as I said, I was with CNN when Turner was running it from 86 to 88. And I remember it being a lean, mean news machine. It was the honor of my life to be involved. We did fantastic journalism. It was investigative journalism. Today, what I see is Invasion of the Body Snatchers Part 2. And 4 o'clock in the morning, the pods open, and out come the zombie reporters, and they all sound alike. And that's what I see with the mainstream media. These, zombie reporters who wouldn't know truth if it bit them in the butt. And any reporting that they're doing is halfway objective. I think is more people just trying to figure out how to cover their butt because they know a reckoning is going to come. A reckoning is going to come. And then a lot of these major household names are not going to be major household names anymore.
Well, if it turns out that they're working with China to overthrow the U.S. Constitution, I mean that's treason.
Absolutely.
The same
And,
same with the media.
And the media has been co-opted, but there's also new media that's coming out. I'm seeing a whole new, in the last year in particularly, I'm seeing One American News, Epoch Times. I'm seeing a lot of individual, independent sources. I never go to mainstream media. It's why? I know it's propaganda and lies. I don't have time to read propaganda and lies, watch their broadcast. Don Lemon with his, oh my God, it couldn't be any worse than this, and all of the, twisted agony on his face. I think Don Lemon must get up for an hour every morning and practice his agonized look in the mirror. So outrageous. If I were to, for Don Lemon, I have one message. Remember what your mom said. You keep doing that, you'll go blind.
Yeah, well, I remember Cuomo was up on TV, and I seen this clip where he was like, "Tell me where it says protesters need to be peaceful," and it's like, the right of protesters to peacefully assemble. It's right in the Constitution of the United States. Did you not read that? It's like, wait a minute, like
apparently not. But the thing of it is there's going to be, in Seattle right now, the summer of love. Didn't work out that way, huh? 3 shootings, somebody dead. And one of the Antifa rioters wants to sue the police for not coming in time. Figure it.
Yeah, good luck with
but
that.
I'll tell you, what's happening now is property owners and businesses are starting to file lawsuits against the city of Seattle. And they're saying, hey, you did not defend and protect our rights. And they are going to go at them. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the courts.
Yeah, there's a lot of big businesses that are leaving Seattle too. They're going down to Phoenix. I think I was reading.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. They're going to Phoenix and elsewhere. They're, you're seeing, for example, in North Carolina, they lost how many millions and millions of dollars were lost because a Democrat chases it off and says, no, we're gonna declare it a COVID site and shut it down or something like that. Excuse me. So what are they going to do? They're going to have the business meeting for the party as they planned and fully compliant with the nonsense, and it's only going to last a day or two. And then once the business party for the GOP is finished and they've got the platform and all, they've done all their paperwork, and then it goes to Texas, and Trump is, that's the big show. Then the big convention, and they're going to roll it out. And so what they're doing is North Carolina gets to have their COVID threat, and guess what? They still get to keep the GOP business, but like maybe 2% of it. And the rest of it has gone out of state now. I'm sure that governor and that mayor are going to have to explain that to the voters in November.
Yeah. Hey, Marshall, we're out of time. Where do you want?
Yeah.
Where do you want? You want to plug some stuff. Your websites. Where do people find you?
You can just go to marshallmasters.com, my website, and that'll take you to my website, Your Own World USA. That's YOWUSA.com. But just marshallmasters.com. And while you're there, please check out my new book, Win-Win Survival Communities. I did this book to help people survive the coming flyby. And while other people are hitting walls, in a win-win, you're going over speed bumps. And while other people are sitting in the ground eating dead food in a box, you're growing live food and you're having a good life. I don't care if there's earthquakes, volcanoes, whatever, because it's an all hazards facility. And it's made with the most beautiful bunkers in the world, concrete domes. So come take a look at that. Thank you.
That'd be pretty neat. All right, and we'll be right back on Conflict Radio right after this. Well, folks, isn't that interesting? You know, there's some interesting. You know, if you go and do some work, there's a website called QAlerts.app where you get to go and see all the posts from Q and what he's actually saying. And it's strange that this could be a move by our military to circumvent the mainstream media, which has been taken over by the deep state via control of China or somebody else. I mean, that's insane to think about. I mean, what if that's the case? I mean, think about it. Like China and the Democrats working together along with the mainstream media to overthrow the Constitution of the United States to create a new country. I mean, it's mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. And I don't know if it's true or not. I have no idea. I mean, it's definitely an interesting subject to discuss and talk about. But if you think about how even talking about this or discussing it gets you banned from YouTube or gets you put in an algorithm where nobody's going to be able to see what you say. I mean, doesn't that just say it all? Why, if it's such crap, why the cover up? You don't cover up nothing, right? So it's interesting to think about. I'll go ahead and read this post here. I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. This was posted by Q on June 24th, 2020, and it says, "You have been selected to help serve your country. Never retreat from the battlefield, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Use other platforms as a form of centralized command and control. Organize and connect. Bridge through linking. Source memes, material from Battlefield and or Garage, highlights and share, take and drop. Mission 1. Dispute, reject, propaganda push through posting of research and facts." So the mission 1 is basically saying, dispute the propaganda on the mainstream media through posting of research and facts. Mission 2, support role of other digital soldiers. One falls, another stands, rises. Mission 3, guide, awaken others through use of facts, declass 1-99 material and other relevant facts and memes. Decouple MSDNC control of InfoStream. Ask, counter, questions to initiate thought versus repeat echo of MSDNC propaganda. Mission 4, learn use of camouflage digitally, primary account suspended, terminator, use of secondary. Mission 5, identify strength, weaknesses, personal and designated targets, RE, Twitter and Facebook, other example, RE, memes, failure to read through use of algo. Think Tron, MCP, Master Control Program. Dependence on person-to-person capture. Slow response time, unidentified users. Game theory, information warfare. Welcome to the digital battlefield. Together we win. Now, I mean, who's gonna make that up? I mean, not make it up, but you know what I'm saying. Like, that sounds pretty. I don't know. I don't even know if I'll put this outro on there, but honestly, I don't care. It's interesting to look at. It's interesting. You know, there's a lot of interesting things out there, and the facts are that we need to keep our minds open to different possibilities that we might not even comprehend. Let's look up from the spider that we're all told to look at, and maybe look around at our house, because our house is burning. Something's going on. There's something going on. Definitely something. You know, is it what Q says? I don't know. I mean, we'll find out, right? We're gonna find out. But either way, whether it's right or wrong, it's still good to know, and it's still good to maybe put a little time into studying, because this could be something very significant. And if it is, you know, it might want to be something that you're ready for. So, anyway, that's our show today. Appreciate you tuning in. This is Conflict Radio. We got a lot of really good guests coming up. Our next show, we're actually getting Jared Murphy back on. And we're going to talk about some things that we didn't have time to talk about last time. And that should be interesting. And we've got some other really good guests lined up. And, you know, we're sailing forward. We're doing our thing. And we're putting up a lot of good content that I think that everybody should find interesting. At least I find interesting. And you don't have to listen to every show if you don't want to. You don't have to listen to this one. I don't care. But I wasn't gonna blow it off. I wasn't gonna ignore it. We were gonna talk about it because it's something that's going on in the world, and we should be able to talk about it. There's nothing wrong with that. So that being said, we'll catch you next time on Conflict Radio. Be safe.